In this video, I want to quickly review gooey toast, a really unique toast notification library for React and Next.js. What makes this interesting is the morphing blob animation. As you can see, I'm going to click this example with description. I'm going to click that. Here we go, right? The animation is super smooth, and that's why I love it, the morphing blob animation. So let's take a look how we can using that. So first I'm going to generate a brand new Next.js application. Now we need to install the package. So let's go back in here. The package name is gooey toast. I'm going to copy and paste that to the terminal. And next, what we have to do is let's try to just clone the component, right? I'm going to use this command right here. So of course, this basically will also install a setcn. And if you not yet installed setcn, this basically will also install setcn automatically. Alright, so now we have this component folder, and inside that we have UI/gooey toaster. So this is basically the component. So simple, right? And let's try to import that or running the toaster container on the layout in here under the children. So let's do gooey toaster, right? It should become from the /UI, not come from the package. So just like this, and you can just put the position to whatever you want, like for example top center, right? So now let's take a look how we can use the toaster on, for example, page.tsx in here. If you take a look on the gooey toaster component, basically this is not part of setcn component. That means you can install the gooey toaster without setcn, of course. The required things in here, if you take a look on the GitHub, is basically React and also frame of motion and also the component itself, which is the gooey toast, right? So you can install the gooey toast without setcn basically. If you take a look on documentation, this is the way you using that, as you can see in here, right? Just really simple. So let's just trying to still using this setcn because it's just same basically. So first, let's just take a look at the basic toast type like a default, success, error, warning, and info. But first, we have to import the gooey toast from the add component /UI/gooey toast. But this is basically, if you take a look on the component gooey toast, it's just come from the package, right? Gooey toast come from the package and just export that right here. So that means you can just using that from the UI/gooey toaster, or you can use just using that from the package itself. It's just same. So let's trying to do on click on the default on a click and say equals to arrow function. And in here we can running the gooey toast, right? And then we can just put the value in here like a default like this. So now let's take a look. If I click default, as you can see, that's the default look like, nothing special, right? So how about the success? Simple. So here I'm going to copy and paste that. To using the success toast, it's pretty simple. You can just using .success. To using the error, you can just use .error. To using warning, you can just use .warning, right? And the info, you can use .info like this. And now everything should be works. If you go back in here, that's the default success, right? The color is automatically green, error, warning, and info. Great. So how if I want to add description on toast? It's pretty simple. Here you can just add comma and then object and then put the description and paste the text. That's it. Here, let's take a look. Here, if I click send, as you can see, we have the description, right? It's super nice. And anyway, it's not just text description. You can even put a component here. So I'm going to say description, right? Description. And then instead of return just text, I'm going to return component in here. Of course, you can put the component to any file, but for simplicity, I just want to put that in here. As you can see, this is div. This is component that have a styling from the Tailwind CSS, have this background and etc. So let's take a look at the result. If I click deploy, as you can see, that's the component render, right? That's super nice. And another thing is we can add button action. For example, this share link right here, if I click that, as you can see, we have the description, right? So for example, I want to add action button in here. So you can do that basically under the description, you can add action like this. And then in here, you can put an object and you can say the label, what label you want to show. Like for example, copy text like this, right? Now it's still error. The reason is because the on click is missing. So that's required. So I'm going to put on click event in here. So what I'm going to do in here is just navigator.write text, this one right here. And if the copy is success, I want to say success label to, for example, copy it. All right, so let's try to save that. Let's take a look. If I click share link, now as you can see, we have this button copy. If I click the button, now we have the copy it right here. That means it's success, copy it. If I paste that on the URL, here we go, right? We have this example.com. So next, how about the promise toast? So in here, as you can see, we have this button. When I click that, it's basically will running the handle save function. So let's try to create that function on the top in here. So I'm going to say function handle save. So in here, we can run gooey toast.promise because we're going to handle the promise in here. So the first parameter is basically the function to fetch the data. So I'm going to create save post maybe. So I'm going to create the async await function on the top in here. As you can see, it's just pretty simple. This is basically async function called save post. As you can see, I create a REST variable. It is await for the https JSON placeholder typeecho.com/post. And this basically make a post request and send the body title, body, and user ID. And also send the headers, right? Content type application JSON. If the response is not okay, just return error request failed. If okay, the return should be response.json. That's it. It's pretty simple. As you can see, gooey_toast.promise. And then in here, we have to put the another props in here. It should be an object. So in here we can add condition. Basically, if the post request is loading, let's just show this saving with 3 dot. And then if the post request is success, right, we can also add a text in here, like for example, post saved. And also if the promise failed or error, I can put string like something went wrong. As you can see, all the condition like loading or success or error is handled by gooey_toast.promise. So we don't have to handle that manually basically. So let's take a look how this works. So if I click save, as you can see, it's make a request in here and we have post save. That means this is success, right? And of course, you can always add description in here if you want, like for example, description, if success, show this description, if error, show this description. So let's try. If I click that again, now we should see the description because this is success, right? Here we go. You changed our life. Great. So how about if the post request is failed? So here I'm going to add the condition, right? If the should fail is true, should fail is basically props. By default, I'm going to say false, right? If the should fail is true, it's basically will through the error right here. Great. So this basically will simulate the network server error. Let's create the button. I'm going to scroll down and this is the button. As you can see, handle save, this is true. And I'm going to grab the props in here. I'm going to grab the should fail, by default is false. And we have to send that value on save post. Here we go. So now let's take a look. If I click the success, of course, it should be success. Here we go. If I click error, now it should be error. Something went wrong. Please try again, right? For example, if you want to add action button, you can also do that here on the after description. You can put action and then inside that you can put object. And if this is error, you can put the label like retry, for example. And then you can add on click in here. In this on click, you can run again the handle save function. Handle save function, and you can put false in here to make sure the should fail, it should be false right now, right? So let's try. If I click that, now we should have the retry button. If I click that, of course, it's basically will make a new post request, and now it should be post save, right? That's super nice. And also basically you can customize the style. For example, if you take a look on the documentation, this one right here, custom style, right? On the object in here, you can put like a fill color, and border width, and etc. This is the custom color, as you can see. So yep, you can just styling the toast whatever you want. So I think that's it guys for this video. Hope this helpful and you can just implement the gooey toast on your project.